Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our walkthrough, our brand new technique of the month. And it's going to be a fun one. It's one of my favorite techniques, is what we're going to be working on this month, the open cup technique. And you might have seen this before. You've probably seen a few videos if you've been watching videos. It's a pretty popular technique. It is very similar to the floating cup technique, which is one of my other favorite techniques. Only there's a big difference to it, which is we'll get into that in a minute. But I love this technique. This is going to be our September technique, which is awesome. I wanted to do something really fun that I really liked because September is my birthday month. Well, my birthday is in September. I wouldn't say I own the whole month though. So, and I know a lot of you have birthdays in September as well, which is pretty weird, but also very awesome. So we're going to have a whole lot of fun this month with the open cup technique. And there's a few different ways to do it. I'll be showing you one kind of the standard method today in our demo. But then next week in our Pouring Night Live, I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways you can incorporate the open cup technique. So welcome everyone. Hey, Susan and Carla and Lily is here. Welcome. Hey, Pat, LCJ. Hey, Jay. And I'm sure more people are joining very quickly here, which is awesome. So welcome everyone. I hope you're ready to learn about the open cup. And it is a really cool and super fun technique. So I have created a technique walkthrough page for you like I normally do. We've got the open cup technique here. It's got a little bit about the technique, some of my favorite mixing formulas, which I'll be talking about in a minute, some kind of the walkthrough, the step-by-step walkthrough, some tips and tricks, and so kind of the standard technique sheet. If you want to print that out, it will be in the membership after we're done here tonight. I have a brand new open cup section that I will create. So let's talk about the open cup. It is very similar, like I mentioned, to the floating cup technique. And the biggest difference is the way we layer the paints. So if you recall the floating cup, we worked on that several weeks ago. We also kind of touched on the open cup in that section, but we didn't really talk about it extensively. So I wanted to have a dedicated month all about the open cup. And so the big difference is with the floating cup, we're layering cups or we're layering our paints in a cup, kind of like a regular flip cup, only we've got our little hole poked in there. We've got our tape tab, and then we flip the whole cup over on our canvas, which is covered in a base coat. And we pull that little tab and the paint flows out from under the cup into our base coat and creates a lot of cool magical effects. And I love that technique. I never get sick of it. It might be my favorite, and this might be my close second. It's almost like a tie. Now, the difference between the open cup and the floating cup is we are not layering a cup. We're actually layering our paints right on our canvas in an open cup. So the open cup is basically just a cup with the bottom cut off, and it acts very similar to our floating cup. So as we are layering paints in our open cup, the paint builds up inside and it reaches a point where it begins to flow out from underneath the cup, just like in the floating cup technique. So it is very cool. I find that the open cup, you can generate some more cells, more interesting cells, even than the floating cup, because it's happening gradually. The paint is kind of building up and flowing out gradually, which really helps create cells. I don't know exactly why that is. I think it might have something to do with that gradual buildup and timing. But it is a really cool, fun, awesome technique. I'd say some of my very favorite paintings that I've ever done are open cup techniques. So, and I looked for a few of them, but I couldn't find them through all my boxes. I didn't want to search, but I will share some images with you of some of my favorite open cup pours. So let's talk a little bit about what we need, which is not that much. Obviously we need our canvas and our paints. And I'll talk about our pouring formulas in a second and the consistency I like. But basically, we just need an open cup. And we'll talk about this for a minute. That's kind of it. And it's a very simple tool. Um, Now, this is just a regular old 5.5 ounce cup that I use for mixing. And I just cut the bottom off of it. I've used this many, many times as an open cup, but you could use like a smaller one, which I like a lot. I like to keep them relatively small. This is just one of those 3 ounce Dixie cups. This works great too. Also, you could use some very lightweight cookie cutters. Like I've got a couple here. This is like a heart shape. Like these are really old. This is like a very lightweight, like heart shape. This is like a bear. And I'll talk about this in a minute. Don't worry about the shape though. I'll talk about that in a second. I even have like a old star. With the cookie cutters, look for the very cheapest, lightest weight ones you can find. I would avoid things like these big metal ones with the like rubber on them, because we want our open cups, whatever they may be, to be lightweight, and let that paint flow out from underneath them as easy as possible. So I would avoid things like this and something like this. And they even make like some open cup vessels now. I've seen them at like Michael's. I've seen other artists use them. You could try them out. They look very big and heavy to me. I really don't think you need them. You can make your own. I would recommend making your own to start with, and the cookie cutters and things like that. That's all we really need. The only problems with the cookie cutters could be the height of them. You have to kind of you can't go over the top, let the paint flow over the tops. You have to kind of build up the paint gradually, kind of let it flow out. That can be the only kind of tricky part with maybe the cookie cutters. But we'll talk about that, especially next week. I'll show you some cookie cutter open cups in our demos next week. Today, we're going to keep it pretty simple and straightforward, just using some of our homemade open cups. So, by the way, if you have any questions as I'm talking here, please throw them in the comments. And I've been chatting. I'm going to just check and see if there's anything I missed. And nope, nothing yet, I don't think. So, all right, cool. All right, cool. Lots of chatting, which is great. Okay. So, and then Jay says, Dollar Tree, absolutely. Dollar Tree is a great place to go look for like the cookie cutter things. So yes, go check out the Dollar Tree for sure. And Lily says she bought an open cup in a swirl pattern. She hasn't used it yet though. That sounds really cool. Yeah, I don't. You could buy them if you want and check them out, see how they work for you. So we'll work on a few different things. And Donna's asking, you make cookies? I sure do. I make some darn good cookies. Of course, they're not my recipes, but they are really, really good. So, but these are old ones from when I was a kid. I still have like a bunch of cookie cutters from when I was really, really young. I haven't used them in a while though. So, but all right. So let's continue on here. So, like I mentioned, this is a great technique for generating cells, and you can generate even more cells with this one, I believe, than the floating cup. And it's also great for lacing. So, I mean, no guarantees, of course, but it is prone to create some very cool lacing, especially if you use the paint mixing formula that I'm going to be using today. And it's on here, of course, on our technique sheet. The two basic formulas I like to use are the easy formula, which we use all the time, and the Liquitex pouring medium formula. And that one, I have the recipes on here. They're also available on the mixing charts. If you go in the membership where the mixing charts are, it's really laid out for you, very detailed. Right underneath the easy recipe is the Liquitex recipe. So you've probably seen it, but I'll go over it for you. The Liquitex recipe, which is using the Liquitex pouring medium right here, the gloss one, is 3 parts Floetrol, so regular old American Floetrol, 2 parts of the Liquitex pouring medium, 3 parts of paint, and then whatever water you might need to get the proper consistency. And using the Liquitex formula helps generate some more cells. But I love the crispness and really sharpness of the lines and lacing that are created when you use the Liquitex formula. And you can use that formula, the Liquitex formula, with any pour basically you want. It works great with pretty much any technique. So regular flip cups, the floating flip cups, ring pours, straight pours. It's a great formula to use for um, pretty much all of the techniques, really, unless it has to be a very specific one. But you could also use it in conjunction with like the cloud pour mixture if you wanted to. So you have a cloud pour mix, and then your other paints could be mixed with the Liquitex mixture. So it's a very versatile formula. I've used it with pretty much everything, and I really, really like it. The only drawback is you got to put in the Liquitex pouring medium, which can be kind of pricey. So this bottle right here is about 32 bucks, which is kind of pricey. And you're not using a ton of it, but it does, add up after, several paintings and stuff. So you don't have to use it. You're going to see what the results will look like tonight after we do our demo. And then if you want to try it out, go ahead and maybe order some. I would highly recommend getting the 32 ounce bottle. That's $32. So it's like $1 an ounce. Yikes. But it's by far the better, most cost-effective way of buying this stuff. If you have some extra cash laying around, you might want to get the gallon. If you know you're going to use it. The gallon is probably, I've seen it between $60 something and $70 something. You have to kind of get that online. You can check out Amazon. It's in my Amazon storefront under the pouring medium section, I believe. But I mean, that's, 70, 80 bucks for Liquitex pouring medium. So you kind of want to be sure you're really going to like it and use it. So, but in the meantime, if you want to try it out, this is by far the most cost-effective way. They do sell it in like a 16 ounce bottle and I think an 8 ounce bottle, but you're paying so much more per ounce if you get those smaller quantities. So I found the 32 is the one I like the best. I have gotten the gallon before, and that's lasted a while, but I was really using it a lot for a lot of different paintings. So, but that's up to you. You don't have to use it. You can use the easy formula as well. And you can, you'll get similar results. I just really like the results I get with the Liquitex pouring medium. So, and the consistency, let's talk about that really quickly. You could use either consistency number 2 or 3, which if you've gone through the consistency course, you know what those are. And I really like having a number for the consistency. It makes everything so much easier, especially for me, like teaching you, but also in my mind, now I can equate like number 3 or number 1 with kind of the mound that needs to be formed. So the number 3 consistency is what I like best. It's a little bit thinner than that standard number 2 consistency. And the number 3 is the slight mound. And so I really like that one a lot more. I seem to can generate more cells. It's a little bit thinner and it helps the paint kind of flow out from under the open cup a little bit easier. So the number 3 consistency is what I'll be using tonight. And it's probably what I use most often with the open cup. And I use that a lot with the floating cup as well. So let's see here. Let's see. Any questions? Any other questions? And Monique's got a great comment or great question. How about using glue wall or school glue as a pouring medium for this technique? You definitely could use the glue pouring medium and maybe the coconut oil. I would also use that too. You might as well, and then you can get those beautiful silicone cells or the coconut serum cells. So yeah, absolutely use the school glue or the Elmer's formula will work great. And a couple drops of the coconut oil or your silicone. You can torch that to bring up those cells to make them, come to life. And that would be a very cool way to do it as well. Just maybe mix, when you're mixing that up, mix it to the same consistency, the number 3 consistency, and look for that slight mound. Now, the only difference really when you're using the glue versus like the Floetrol mixture is the glue mixture tends to feel a little bit different. It feels a little bit kind of stringier or stickier than the Floetrol mixture, but so it's harder to go by feel. Like, don't compare the glue mix when you're mixing it to the Floetrol mixture, but just look for that slight mound. And if you get that, so that's more of a go by the look of the mound instead of the feel. But if you go by that look, you'll be in good shape. So great comment, or great question, Monique. And Donna has got a question about the consistencies, and you can go check out the consistency course, Donna. You have access to it, and I do have downloads inside there where you can print out the 5 different consistencies. It's actually 5, and it has a description of each one, and it has the exact recipe to do those mixing exercises that are in the course. So you can mix them exactly how I mix them, using the same paint, exactly how much water to add, and then you can get a real good feel for the consistencies that I like and I'm talking about. So you can go check that out. You have it in your membership. Just go to that products tab at the top of the screen, and it should pop up for you. And Monique is asking, what's the ratio for that pouring medium again? It is on your sheet, but for the Liquitex formula, it is 3 parts Floetrol, 2 parts Liquitex, 3 parts paint, and then, of course, the water if you need it. Using the Liquitex, you start out with kind of a thinner consistency, just because this is a tiny bit thinner than I'd say Floetrol is. But I mean, it's very, very close. So normally I would add water. Normally I add water to pretty much all the paints when I'm using the Liquitex, similar to the Easy formula. So it's a 3-2-3 ratio for the Liquitex. So, all right, cool. And Donna said, demo the 3. I could do a demo for you, like a live demo, and answer any questions you might have. Sure, we could try that out. I'd be totally up for that. And we can take a look at the consistencies. And Jay is saying, a friend bought me Elmer's clear glue, the bubbles. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've used the clear glue several times. It didn't seem to be a big problem for me. Just mix slowly. And if you're having an issue with the bubbles, that one you might want to mix ahead of time, maybe the night before, and then let it sit, cover it up, let it sit, let those bubbles disperse on you. So yeah, those bubbles, bubbles in the glue. I never really find they're a big problem, but I haven't used the clear glue in quite a while. So, and thanks, Carla. She likes the course. The course is great. Thank you very much. I'm really, really happy you liked it. And Monique is asking about the glue recipe. The glue recipe, let's see, I have a couple that now the glue recipe, I would just keep it very, very simple and do the same as the Easy formula. So basically 2 parts glue, 1 part paint. You could even do 1 part glue, 1 part paint if you wanted to, but 2 to 1, keep it very simple. And if you use like the craft paints, that's like a 1 to 1 is what I would do. But yeah, 2 to 1 is just fine. So, all right. So let's take a look. I'm going to flip over here. And so that's pretty much it. It's not that complicated of a technique, really. But once we get into doing the demo, if questions might arise, and I'll be happy to answer them. But let's jump into doing our demo. So I'm going to move this aside. I'm looking at my notes. I think I hit everything. So move these down here. And I've got, I'll talk about my colors and the whole shebang. Now, one thing I did do is my base coat, and I'll talk about this in a second. If you're going to use the Liquitex formula, you could mix your base coat with the Liquitex formula as well. I've done that many times, and it works really good. But if you don't want to waste or use all that, not wasting, but using all that Liquitex in your base coat, because you have to mix quite a bit, you could use the Easy formula in your base coat and then just use the Liquitex formula for your colors. And that's what I did here. So my base coat is just the Easy formula, which is just Floetrol and paint and some water. And then all the colors are the Liquitex formula. So I'm going to flip over here, and we're going to take a look at these. Before we jump into the demo, I'm going to take a look at the cookie cutters for one quick second. So let me just flip over here, and here we go. So these are, one cool thing about like the cookie cutters is you can, pour like you're going to do an open cup with just a regular old round cup, but the paint will start emerging out of the cookie cutters kind of in different, in different shapes. It's not going to look just like a heart, or it's not going to look just like a bear. But I like these shapes because they have a lot of little sharp edges and round edges. So it can give your painting a little more interesting look than just a kind of all a circular look. And we'll look at that in next week when we do some demos with the cookie cutters. But so if you look for some shapes that just have a lot of interesting edges to them, straights, angles, curves, sharp edges, it can give a cool look to your paintings. And so we'll take a look at that a little bit more. That's why like the little bear here would be a fun one to use, because it's all these interesting shapes that it has around it. And it lets the paint kind of flow out in kind of a cool direction. You're not going to be able to tell it's a bear or heart, once you kind of tilt some and, move the paint around. But you can kind of start out with kind of an interesting, cooler paint puddle a bit. So it's kind of neat. So let me, I got to zoom out a little bit. Let me zoom out just a tiny bit. There we go. All right, so I'm going to just use either my little tiny paper open cup or my little larger plastic cup. I like to use something that's relatively small for the size of the canvas. You could even use like a great big cup for a much larger canvas, but this to me is far too big, this cup, for an open cup on this size canvas. So I like to keep my cup size relatively small for the canvas size. Now you could do multiple open cups on a canvas if you wanted to. I'd probably recommend a larger canvas, but if that was the case, then you could use a few different sizes and a few different cups and a few different sizes if you wanted to. So we'll take a look at that also next week. But I'll probably go with this one. This is kind of the standard size I use, which is that 5.5 ounce cup. So my regular mixing cups. I'll probably use this one. And let's take a look at our paints. So I just have white here. So this is going to be kind of a very standard kind of open cup. They're just white. And this is the Easy formula again. And I've mixed up 4 different colors. And also I'll talk about the color theme if you want to try it out for the month. And the color theme for the month is warms and cools, and using both warms and cools in the same painting. So I'll grab my color wheel really quick, and I'll show you what I mean. So it's very simple. So right here is a color wheel, and every color wheel should have this. But right here, it's if you go to the yellow, and there's a little arrow here, and from the yellow all the way down to red violet, this half of the color wheel is warm, and from the yellow green all the way down to the violet, this side of the color wheel is cool. So the color, my color theme for the month is just using a couple colors from both sides of the wheel. So today we're going to have two warm colors. I've got this, it's kind of like this burnt orange color and a gold. And those would be like yellow and orange. And then I've got this light green here and this much darker green. So, and those would be on the cool side. So I got, kind of 50-50, like two warms, two cools. You don't have to have that though. You could have more cools than warms, or more warms than cools. I'd probably recommend that. Make it predominantly a cool painting with some warm accents, or vice versa, predominantly a warm painting with some cool accents. So that's the color theme. It's very simple. Just try to incorporate both sides of the color wheel, some warm colors and some cool colors. And those colors could be anything you want. We're just looking at the color temperatures and trying to put both of them in there. So this is kind of like a fall color palette, I guess you could say. So we've got greens and these kind of like orangey golds. And I'll show you exactly what these colors are. And Carla is asking a question, which is a really good question. She's asking, is it better to have something with a little lip on it? And she's referring to the open cup. And I would say, yeah, you want your open cup, right here, to have some kind of like a softer or not a really sharp edge. So I wouldn't put this side down. I cut off the bottom of my cup. I wouldn't put this side on my canvas. I would put the opening side. So that has kind of like a, it's not really, soft or super curved, but it is, it's not really sharp. So that will kind of let the paint flow out from this end of the cup a lot easier. So if we're looking at like the cookie cutter things, now these have kind of a sharp edge that's the cutting edge on it. And then it has this kind of flatter edge. You might be able to see that. Might be difficult. There's kind of like that flat edge on there. And you could put either side down, I think. I'd probably put the sharper edge down as long as it's flat, just because it'll let the paint flow out as well. And if you put this side down with this funny little edge here, there's a tendency that might want to get kind of trapped by some of the paint. And of course, this has that edge too, but it is a little softer. So I would just experiment with, you could experiment with both sides. It's not a super big deal though. As long as it's fairly lightweight, your open cup, you should be in pretty good shape. So, but that is a really good question though. So, okay. And let's see here. All right, so I'm just checking to see if there were any other questions. I don't see any at the... And, Lily is asking, do you turn the cookie cutter upside down to control the point, or the paint flow, I'm sorry. Yes, you could. Like I was just mentioning that. You could turn it upside down, or you could use really either side, in my opinion. Like with this particular cutter right here, either side would probably work just fine. So, but we will find out next week. So as long as they're flat, that's probably the most important part. As long as it's a flat, has a flat surface on it, and it can sit like kind of flush in your paint. Okay. So let's take a look at our colors here. So again, this is just the white easy formula. This is one of my favorites, metallic orange. And to make it kind of that burnt color, I added a little bit of bronze from Liquitex Basics. So it's not so bright orange. I wanted it to be a little more subtle, and I quite like this color. Now you could make it a little brighter or darker depending on how much bronze you put in. So you can really control the intensity, which is kind of fun. And this one here is just regular old gold. I just used Artist Loft Old Gold. This one here is green gray, which is one of my favorites, but I also added some white in here to lighten it up just a little bit. So it's a combo of white and the green gray from Liquitex. And this one is another one of my favorite colors. It's metallic leaf green from Artist Loft, plus a little bit of black in there. I wanted to both darken it and keep it, I wanted it darker and also kind of knock down the super bright green. And black does a great job of that. So it's kind of this darker forest green, which I really, really like. So, and again, you can control how much black you put in. You could get it even darker if you wanted to, or you could use a little less. It all is up to you and the color you like. So I'm going to move these aside for now. Okay, so I've got my open cup, and I'm going to move these over here real quick. So basically what we're going to do is pretty much the same as we would with a floating cup. We're going to spread on a base coat, maybe pour another little puddle in the center, kind of that little puddle we can put our open cup in. And then we're going to start layering our paints right in that open cup. I need to get some gloves out first. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna just pour some base coat just like normal. You don't have to do any kind of fancy flood coat or anything like that. Just spread this out. And you could torch. I'll probably torch a little bit just to get any air bubbles out of here. And by the way, this is a 12 by 16 canvas I'm working on. I need a little bit more. My goodness. One of the only times I don't put enough on. There we go. And the base coat is also the number 3 consistency. I like to mix the base coat and all the paints to the same consistency. So there we go. That looks pretty good to me. And I'm going to scrape this off real quick. I'm going to do a torch first. Then I'll add my little puddle and probably do another quick torch. There we go. Looks good. And let's pour on our small puddle. Now we want the puddle to be whatever size, I'm sorry you can't see that, whatever size our cup is. So make sure your puddle is slightly larger than whatever open cup size you're going to be using. And it doesn't have to be a huge puddle. And you could also do a little tilt to kind of expand it a little bit. And that looks pretty good to me. And it's my puddle, you can't see it, but it's about this big, I'd say. And my open cup is about, yay big. So it's bigger than my open cup. That's what we're after. So all our paints are going to be flowing into that base coat kind of puddle right there. So let's go ahead and just drop our open cup right in the center. And it's in there, trust me, and you'll see it in a second. But Um, okay. And then all we need to do is start adding our colors to our inside our open cup. And I see a question from Monique here. And Monique is asking, we do have metallic colors over here, but they're super expensive. I don't know if she's asking about if you need metallics, and you don't need them to make the cells work. They're nice to have because they can create some beautiful cells, but they're not absolutely necessary to get the cells. So good question. So let's go ahead and start layering our paint. And again, this totally depends on whatever order you want to go in. Kind of the first paints you put in are going to be the first to kind of pop up. I think I'm going to start with some gold and just layer some in there. And then go to the orange, perhaps. And then, move on to maybe the light green, this kind of sage green. And right there, paint is starting, oh, I got a little drip, starting to come out from underneath the cup. And I'll put a little bit of our dark green. Now, the hardest part about the open cup, and you have to kind of think about this and be aware of it while you're layering your colors, is how much paint to put in your open cup. We have to judge this. We kind of have to estimate this amount. If we're doing a normal 16 or 12 by 16 like flip cup, I'd use about 7 ounces if I'm going to do all the tilting. But since we're layering our paints right in the open cup, we don't know exactly how much paint we have put in there. So we have to kind of estimate it. And just try your best, get close enough. I kind of look at the paint puddle I'm creating and the size of it to kind of come up with an estimate. So just do your best. And I'd say we need a little bit more. I'll probably do another layer, and I might alter the colors. Might put a little white in there also, just some of our base coat color. That'll add some contrast. And then I might go with the dark green next. Have some maximum contrast. And you might notice your open cup starts to kind of move around a little bit. That's okay. You could always, if it's moving too much on you, gently move it back. Kind of recenter it if you need to. And I'll go with our light green. And then maybe some more orange. Now I'm seeing a lot of the paint come out. I'm not seeing too many cells at the moment. So, which is a little bit unusual. But we'll keep on going here. Now this is looking pretty good. We've got a nice size paint puddle. And you have to decide, are you going to tilt over the entire canvas? If we are, we might need to add a little bit more paint. Or if we're going to look for maybe some negative space, then if that's the case, you could probably call it good at this stage of the game if you're planning on some negative space. And open cups are great for kind of incorporating negative space in them, I think. So I think I'm going to, what do I want to do? I might add a little bit more, maybe one small third layer. I kind of like that, having that dark green next to the white. Maybe I'll put some of that orange in. So I'm just kind of varying up the way I'm layering the paints. Maybe we'll go with the green next. And a little bit of gold, and I think we might be good. Okay, so now we're beginning to see some cells kind of pop up here, some white cells. And we look like we have some very fine lacing happening around here. But we're getting these very cool rings, like these concentric rings kind of that are flowing out from under the cup. I really like that. So now I think we have enough paint to tilt off, or we could leave some negative space perhaps if it looks like we have a nice composition for the negative space. So at this stage, we can move the cup around a little bit if we want to. Just kind of float it around. And then comes the time of removing our cup. And you could just pull it right off if you want to, and just pull it right off of there. But the problem is we're going to have these solid kind of bands of color or puddles of color. And it's not the most attractive. And so what I tend to like to do is similar to the floating cup. I'll put the cup back on there and do a twirl. And I like to twirl in an area where it's not as interesting. Like over here, it's not super interesting. So I'll probably twirl my cup off of this corner here. Like all this stuff over here, there's a lot of cool things happening. And I want to actually move that back a little bit into the canvas. I didn't want it to fall off. So we're getting more cells that are popping up, which is cool. So to twirl it, I'll just lift my cup a little bit and kind of very delicately kind of twist it off. And you're kind of blending those colors together. And I kind of like that. I might do a little bit more. Something like that. And this will probably get tilted off. So I'm okay with that. I like this kind of dark green. So I'm going to probably leave that. So that's how I like to remove the open cup, is that little twirl maneuver. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could do a little bit of, you could play around with your like little paint puddle here. You could do some finger drags if you wanted to. You could use a skewer. You could do some like lines. You could get the combs if you wanted to and put some interesting marks in there at this stage before we start to tilt. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we could try if we wanted to make it a little bit more interesting area there, kind of the center. I think I'm going to just leave it for now and just see what happens. A lot of this will get tilted off. I'm probably going to tilt this corner off first, and then we'll move on from there. So it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to expand this paint puddle a little bit. And if we want to leave some negative space at this stage, I don't want to follow my tilting procedure completely, because I want to kind of create some area where we can have some interesting negative space. And we could always tilt over it later if we didn't like it. But we are getting a lot of cool cells now coming up. Those white cells are popping up. We're getting some little cells in here. We could do a little torch again if you wanted to. Generally, I don't torch a lot, but we've got a couple air bubbles. We could torch those. You can bring up some little, you can pop some little air bubbles inside there if you want to. So it's a very cool technique. The paint puddle looks very cool at this stage of the process. So now let's go ahead and do a little bit of tilting. I'm going to just move some of these paints aside. And I saw a question earlier. Carla had a question. Why does it look cloudy? And it is blending with the base. Yeah, so the paints are seeping from under the cup into that white base coat. So the base coat does play a pretty prominent role in this technique. And you don't have to use a white base coat. It could be any color. But keep that in mind, that the base coat color will play a part within the painting. So because it was flowing into that base coat, and that's why it was looking kind of cloudy And so we've got like some white around here, but that cloudiness can turn into some of this lacing. So we've got this kind of cool lacing around here. Now, one tip is if I did mix the base coat with the Liquitex, we'd probably get some more defined looking lacing lines. So there is an advantage of using the Liquitex in your base coat. I just wanted to use an easy formula just to show you that you could do it. You don't have to use the Liquitex in the base coat if you don't want to. So, okay, great question though, Carla. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of tilting. Again, I'm going to tilt off of this corner first, I think. So I'm just going to kind of move my paint down there. I'm not in any rush, so I'm going to just take my time. We might lose a few of these cells, but there are more, so that's okay. And then kind of slowly move it back. So far so good. I like it. I think I'm going to tilt off of this corner next here. Actually, I might change my mind. Maybe I'll leave this one. It's kind of interesting. I think I'm going to tilt off of this corner, the opposite corner. Something I don't do very often. Like I mentioned probably the last time we did a demo, I don't often go from corner to corner, like diagonally. But in this case, I think I am going to try it. So we're going to lose these cells here, but that's okay. We've got all these cells, and I really like this kind of transition from this white into the color. So I want to try to maybe keep that as a negative space corner. I'm going to keep on going. I want to turn this into a green corner. Okay, so I kind of recentered the paint. And I'll just take a look at it and see if there's anything else we want to do. I quite like it, actually. It kind of reminds me of a piece of agate or something like that. We've got a lot of these white cells, which I really like. They're really growing and getting large. And again, that's just Floetrol and the Artist Loft soft body white. There's no cloud mix or anything in there. I really love this green line right here. That was kind of right underneath our open cup. And I like our little two negative space corners there. So at this stage, you could just stop. I'm perfectly happy probably to stop right there. Or we could tilt a little bit more off of this corner, I think. That might be cool. This is kind of right in the center. That's kind of our center of interest. And maybe I will, I see Donna has spotted that white corner. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. I didn't notice that one. So I'm just going to tilt back. Now you could just drop some green paint on there if you wanted to, but we could tilt back and touch that white corner. You've got to move the paint over there quite a bit. That might not have been a good idea. Just going to kind of grab some of that. So I'm going to kind of recenter that and then maybe tilt off again. Now, doing that, we have thinned out the paint a little bit, so some more cells might pop up, which would be cool. We're kind of changing the shape of some of these lines and things, which is kind of neat. So I'm going to pour a little bit more off of this corner right down here. Not a lot, though. There we go. And I'll kind of tilt back. Okay, and I think I'm going to call that probably good for this demo. And I really like that sharp green line we've got. And we've got a lot of kind of interesting, they're kind of very cloudy looking cells, but again, there was no satin enamel or anything in this mixture. The other cool thing about the open cup, similar to the floating cup, is you can get these very cool organic, feeling passages, which I really love. And so we do have kind of, green and orange are not the most compatible colors, and we have some blending a little bit, but I don't mind it too much. I don't think it's gone really muddy on us or anything. That part of that is because we didn't start with really bright, super bright colors. We had kind of this a little more neutralized orange. Our green wasn't super bright green. So that helps if you can kind of start with a little bit more neutralized colors, and especially if they're, more complementary colors. They're not going to, if they create some muddy areas, it's not going to look as muddy just because the colors you're using are already a little more neutralized just from the beginning. So let me see if I can, I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit closer what this looks like. It looks a little, the white is hard to see on the camera. Maybe I'll knock down the exposure a little bit. So here, I'll just move it around a little to get a little bit of a close-up. Here's that top left corner. And you can kind of see those kind of white cells, which I kind of like. There's that green line, which I love. And here are some of the white cells on the left-hand side. We do have a lot of small little cells in there, which I kind of like too. So let me zoom back out. Oops, maybe a touch more. There we go. Okay, so let me flip back here. And that is an open cup pour, which is a whole lot of fun. I really like this technique. It's fun to do. It's really fun to see the paint, how it expands and flows, and the different things it can create. So it's just really fun technique to perform, I think. It's one of my favorites, again. So, all right. Any questions you might have before we break? And let's see here. Just check in to see if there are any so thanks for the comments, everyone. I'm glad you like it. Um, yeah, and see, some people are mentioning smokiness, and that has to do with kind of that white. There's kind of like a white haze over some of the colors because that's the base coat where the colors are kind of flowing into that base coat. So yeah, you can get this kind of interesting hazy feeling to your open cup pours. Not all the time, but sometimes. Yeah, and well, thanks, Kathy. I love that. Thank you. And Lily mentioned it looks like a cloudy effect. It does look very cloudy. It's got to be that Artist Loft white. It must have something in there that likes that cloudiness. It's the this one, the soft body acrylic, and a lot of people have mentioned it's kind of a can create kind of some cloudy effects. I think that's probably the case. Um, it's still a good white though. I like to use it. And Lily is asking, is the purple painting the one you demoed earlier? Yeah, this one right behind me is the one. Um, this one is the one I did just Monday. So I did that Monday night and then put the video up yesterday. So that turned out pretty cool. I like the brightness of that purple. So it was a fun painting to do. And Elsie is asking about the white base, and it's just paint and Floetrol, but it's this paint, the soft body from Artist Loft. There is no cloud mixture in there at all. There's no satin enamels or any of that. But this paint has a tendency sometimes to create that cloudy look. But also the paint is, because of this technique, the paint is flowing into that, which is also kind of enhancing that cloudy effect. But there's no cloud, it's no cloud mix at all, just white and Floetrol. All right. Cool. Well, I don't see any other questions. So if last call, if you have any final questions. Otherwise, go check out, I haven't put it in there yet, but I will this evening. You can check out the replay if you want, and you could download our sheet, the Open Cup Technique sheet right here. And the formula is laid out, kind of a step-by-step, kind of what we went over tonight. And you can give one of these a try and see what you think. And next week, we'll take a look at some variations of the Open Cup and try it a few different ways. This is pretty much a standard by the numbers Open Cup, but next week we'll do some different type of Open Cup pours. So, all right. And Donna wants cookie recipes. Well, I will, I can put those in the membership too. My favorite, and they are like Christmassy cookie recipes. My favorite one is like a ginger cookie recipe. They're awesome. So they're like heroin. So you cannot stop at just one. So we'll talk about that down the road a little bit. So thanks, Donna. All right. So thanks everyone. And I will see you Friday. We'll do a Friday demo. Maybe it'll be an Open Cup. Who knows? But I will see you then. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. I will talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.